Hi guys, welcome to my new video. This time we'll go to the north and sometime into the alternative storyline to see what could happen if just one of the many small chances turned up a little bit different than it did. I have called the video ANGMAR RESURRECTED because it will be this ancient realm that Sauron will reinvest again, reconstructing the old fortress of Carndum and sending his forces against the last inhabited areas of Arnor, and also destroying the elven strongholds in the region for good. Let's start with the storyline to know what we are dealing with. After the Battle of Pelennor Fields, where the Witch King of Angmar was killed by Eowyn, helped by the hobbit Merry, and the forces of Sauron were defeated, the captains of the West decided to challenge the might of Sauron and lead their army against Morannon, the Black Gate of Mordor, hoping that the eye of Sauron will turn their way, and so give Frodo a chance to destroy the One Ring. When they arrived to Morannon, the trap was sprung, and they were attacked by Sauron's forces. Thus the Battle of the Black Gate began. But what neither Gandalf nor Sauron knew was that Frodo and Sam reached Orodruin at the time, entering the Cracks of Doom. But instead of destroying the ring, Frodo decided to keep it for himself, and was attacked by Gollum, who bit off his finger with the One Ring still on it. And now we get away from the original story. This time, Gollum does not slip, but puts the ring on his own finger and runs away. What this means is that while the Nazgûl are speeding to the Mount Doom, and Sauron turns his attention thereto, his will still keeps his army intact, and the doom of the brave men in front of Morannon is sealed. Not even the coming of the eagles can turn the tide this time, and the overwhelming numbers celebrate victory in the end. The leaders of the Free Peoples are killed, although the Dark Forces suffered heavy losses for this achievement. Now, Sauron bids his time. All his efforts head towards getting his One Ring back and catching Gollum. In the meantime, his forces are gathering strength, and his plans for conquering Middle-earth, now adjusted to the situation, are put into motion. In these circumstances, Gollum has no real chance and is caught while trying to escape Mordor. The One Ring is back with his master, who uses his regained power to bring his most terrible servant, the Witch King, back from the grave. Then he sends him north to rebuild his old domain of Angmar. When all is ready, Sauron will strike at Gondor from Mordor, at Lorien from Dol Guldur, and at Rivendell from Angmar, all at the same time, using unstoppable force. At least this is the plan, and it is upon us to ensure the northern part works out. Let's start with a short overview of Middle-earth collectible card game rules we will be using to create this Ringwraith deck. We will be building a deck for a 2-deck game, with 30 to 50 resources and the same number of hazards. 12 creature minimum is mandatory for everyone, but I prefer an equal number of creatures as other hazards in my decks, without the need to count a hunt and at-home dragon manifestations, as well as other creatures playable as permanent or short events as half the creature each. This deck will be no exception, although there will be quite a lot of these creatures or event cards. Also, we will prepare a sideboard of 25 cards to complement this play deck. When you look at the map and sites we are to visit, you can see we face one challenge right at the beginning. Angmar is quite far away from our base in Mordor. So far away, the 3 sites we will need have to be in the right-hand bottom corner of the map in order for us not to forget them, even though they have no place on this map at all. The rest of the sites are in Angmar or bordering with this region. There are also 3 Underdeep sites. As there are no strong realms of the Free Peoples around, we will travel mostly through wilderness, mustering armies and gaining allies, building our strength for our ultimate goal, the final assault on Rivendell. At the start of the game, we find ourselves in Minas Morgul. In this tower of sorcery, the home of the Nazgul, the most able servants entrusted with the mission of rebuilding Angmar have been gathered. The leader of this group is Rogrok, an experienced troll commander who was named the Lieutenant of Angmar. The rest of the company consists of 2 old trolls and a troll load. A group of 4 can move quicker and stealthier than an army. Therefore, they are entrusted with the blazon of the eye as a standard to which the orcs, trolls, and evil men will gather when they hang it on the top of the highest tower of the rebuilt Carndum fortress. And because we know that sometimes you need more convincing arguments than flags or banners, a whip comes in handy too. Our first organization phase goes like this. Lieutenant of Angmar influences one of the old trolls. The second old troll takes a whip and influences Trollout. The banner of the eye could be given to the Lieutenant of Angmar or the influenced old troll. More logic is with Rogrok, I suppose, and that's why I have it like that. All in all, we now have 7 points of unused general influence, which serves as a good protection against some hazards, and also keeps our future factions safe from master disperses. As our company is over, well, I don't think we could disguise 4 trolls as anything other than stranded boulders anyway. It gives us some disadvantages, while encountering some hazards. But all our characters, except maybe Rogrok, are expendable, so if you run into problems, simply sacrifice 1 or more non-unique trolls and let Rogrok defeat the monsters always as the last one, as you can decide whether it makes sense not to tap him in the fight and give him the trophy after the creature was defeated. Like this, you could put together nice bonuses to his direct influence and prowess, which are to be had for up to 4 points worth of defeated creatures. The first movement phase will take our company to Dol Guldur. There is not much danger expected there. It's the second one which can pose the first real threat as we move through Anduin Vales to reach Eriador, which consists of multiple wildernesses. I can understand that some of you may have doubts about Sauron's ability to bring back the Witch King to serve him, even when in possession of the One Ring. For those who have the former King of Angmar dead for good, I have prepared a similar variant in which Sauron sends a different Nazgul on this mission. There are 2 main candidates for taking over, either Dwar, the breeder of hounds and wargs, or Horar-Murath, leader of wild tribesmen. I think Sauron would choose Dwar, mainly due to a strong presence of wolves and wargs in the region. Secondly, we'll adjust the starting company composition a little bit, swapping Wild Old Troll for Orc Tracker and Orc Brawler. Then Lieutenant of Angmar influences Trollout and Orc Brawler, while Old Troll influences Orc Tracker. The Old Troll goes into the playdeck, and we can add 1 more Orc Sniffler or Brawler in there too. Otherwise, the deck remains the same, and we can move on. If we stick to the Witch King as our Ring Wraith, we put 2 copies of his card into the playdeck. With him go 10 other characters. Because we do not need to hide who we are, as the forces of the Free Peoples have already been defeated, and the time of spies is over, while the time of brutal force has come, there are no characters other than trolls and orcs. We have here 1 troll chief, who will be our leader if we lose Lieutenant of Angmar. 2 more Trollouts and a bunch of orcs create a pool of expendable characters to be used as food for the swords and spears. Who does not fall into this category are the 3 wild trolls, Burat, Tuma and Wulak. I know the 3 original trolls are safely turned to stone since Bilbo's adventure, but let's take these for some other 3 wild trolls, of which there is more than enough in the mountains. If you have at least 2 of these 3 trolls in the same company, their mind is decreased by 1. But what is more important is their special ability to untap their friend. This does not seem as much use at the first glance. But imagine a situation like this. A creature with 3 strikes attacks the company, Well, all 3 wild trolls are present. Tuma faces the first strike and taps to face it. Then Burat faces a strike, but taps after the strike is assigned to him, but before he actually faces the strike, to untap Tuma. Then Vuluak faces the third strike, and taps before facing the strike to untap Burat. So after the attack, there is only one tapped troll, Vuluak, and we were able to face 2 of the 3 strikes with just -1 penalty to strength instead of -3 for not tapping. And that is worth bringing these 3 into play, don't you think? Now it's time to have a look at what point-giving resources we are going to play. As mentioned before, our task is to build an army worthy of Mordor, in order to conquer the northwest of Middle-earth. Therefore, we'll be trying to get the support of local orcs, namely the orcs of Angmar, and the ice orcs, then the evil men, meaning Hillmen and Angmarim, and also the works of Misty Mountains. It is also important to get the leaders and representatives of the local creatures on our side. Clearly, the most important person for us around is the Great Goblin, followed by the Warg King. The great bats to cover the sun and the crows to feast on our victims are also important, as well as having a warg and a wolf directly supporting our companies. And last but not least, we need to forge or find some weapons to equip our army. Helms, shields and weapons in large quantities is exactly what every army needs. And that is what we will try to provide. An ancient black axe can turn one of our trolls into a second lieutenant, while blasting fire cancels all automatic attacks at the site, for example Rivendell, and liquid fire can get us from precarious situation during a creature attack. As far as the resource events go, this is a very simple deck. Most of the event cards are there to help us defeat attacks, with swift strokes and under his blow cards being there 2 times each. There is just one attack cancelling card in the whole deck, and that is Diversion. The lack of character skills, other than Warrior, limits the cards we can play. Most situations must be solved with the use of brute force, not talk or stealth. There are 3 copies of Voices of Malice included, but remember that our only sage is the Ringwraith. As with Bait to Rule and by the Ringwraith's word, try to move him to Karn Dûm first, and then he can stay there and play the cards we have for him. Maybe you will need to return the Bait to Rule card from the discard pile to your play deck, using Weigh All Things to a Nicety card. But that is the price of having the Ringwraith in the nearest haven. For smooth play of factions, there are 2 cards helping with influence checks. 3 copies of Gifts as Given of Old, and 1 of Old Prejudice. This card needs a little bit of planning, while it can be very useful if played at the right time. For example, having the Angmarim in play gives the Hillman with Old Prejudice +6 to the dice roll. And finally, Orders from Lugburs allows Troll Chief to join the company of the Lieutenant of Angmar, creating 1 strong company if we need to enter some dangerous sites. Now the time has come to discuss where to play each of the point-giving resources. The sites are listed in alphabetical order for easier orientation. Let's start with the factions. Each has its own site where it is playable, and all but one have also a resource which helps us influence the faction. The one I would try to influence without any additional help are the Angmarim, as they are playable in Karn Dûm, and you can try it again in the second round of the play deck. On the other hand, if you have the Angmarim in play, they give a very nice bonus to Hillmen, and if you use All Prejudice, it's tripled. But all of this depends on the card's flow and what you have in hand in the end. Then there are unique allies. Great Goblin is only playable at Goblin Gate. There we have no choice. But the Warg King can be played at multiple sites, namely the White Towers and Weathertop, or even at the Moors if you manage to play the Misty Mountains Works first, and him when the side is already tapped. The non-unique allies are playable at tapped sides, and there are enough of those in the side deck. If you just happen to have nowhere to go, but have the War Wolf and or the War Work in hand, simply use the White Towers or Weathertop to play this ally together with any other you have in hand, as you can always use the other side for the Work King if he is not already in play. Then there are the underdeep sides. Remember that you should not discard the surface side before you have played the items in the underdeeps. This is most important with the underlease, as there is no other place to play the Ancient Black Axe. So please use other sides for major items play than Mount Gundabad until you have the Ancient Black Axe in play. Regarding major items, it is not as easy as usual today. You are bound to wait sometimes till you have 2 of them in hand, as you need to play 2 items at the same time at 2 of the 3 sides where this is possible, meaning both Underlease and Underworlds, together with Zaragdum, where one of those items must be the Usriu of Treasury. If you have just one major item in hand, use Barrow Downs. Then you will have to wait a little bit, but you should be able to rotate the cards quite quickly for this not to be a major hindrance. And finally, take time to play both special items of Blasting and Liquid Fire. These are very useful, as one is possible to discard for safe plundering of Rivendell, and the other against a creature attack, which can give us some interesting points or trophies. And both can be easily played in the second turn of the play deck again, in order not to lose any possible points. Talking about the second round of the deck, it's time to have a look at what we have in the sideboard. When you have your Ringwraith in play and have no better use for him, tap him during the organization phase and bring 5 resources from the sideboard to discard pile. You have to do it at least once, as you will need a sudden call card to finish the game. But there are many points to be had in the sideboard. We have 2 more allies there, 1 Black Horse if we need to move the Witch King around, which I can imagine only when we have suffered horrible casualties and have no one left to roam the land. Don't be mistaken, it can end like this, as every fight is risky, and we do not have many ways how to cancel attacks in this deck. If it comes to that, you have a Fiery Blade to enhance your Ringwraith's power. But you can place this card anytime, as it does not hurt anything at all, even when it has no real usage. The second ally, the second copy of War Work, is just adding numbers to our Wolf pack. 4 more factions, Goblins of Goblin Gate, Hill Trolls, Orcs of Gundabad and Works of Forochel, are coming to beef up our army of the north. And of course, we will try to rouse Skorba. What a nice complement a Fire Dragon is for an Orc army, you can imagine, and Morgoth with Sauron has seen it with their own eyes in the first age of Middle-earth. Regarding the items, it's time to put up some armor. Therefore, we have 3 copies of Black Mail Coat. And to crown our Witch King, we need to ransack Rivendell to get the Iron Crown, which I recommend to send to Barad-dûr and store there. 1 more mission remains, and that is to attack the Shire. We will capture some halflings to work as slaves, just for the pleasure of the Dark Lord, and steal the Red Book of Westmarch for Sauron to study. It will be moved to Barad-dûr as well. Now, when we have opened the topic of sideboard resource play, we can have a look at the list of sites with their corresponding resources. This time, it is much easier than during the first round, as it enables us to play the items quickly, not needing to wait for any other major item to go with the one we have in hand, because there are more than enough sites for major items play. And also, we can play some major items we have lost along the way again now. This time, play the Underlease side first, as you are not waiting for anything, and you will need the surface side of Mount Gundabad free to play the Orcs of Gundabad faction. And forget about playing items at Zaragdum. There you will lose 1 major item, sacrificing it to Skorba to try winning him for our cause. Regarding the rest of the factions, it's only upon you which influencing resource you will use for which faction. Keep one gifts as given of old for scoreboard though. If you do not succeed in influencing all of them, don't be too sad. It can happen and you should have more than enough points as it is. The war work is again playable at Weathertop or the White Towers, whichever you like more. For the Iron Crown, we will have to go to Rivendell. That is our ultimate goal. You should be well prepared to manage this. And if you discard Blasting Fire, you can chase all the lousy elves off. The second dangerous adventure is to pillage the Shire, namely loot the back end and steal the Red Book of Westmarch. During this mission, you should also try to play the kill all but not the halflings card, and bring some red-like hobbits to your lord for interrogation and torture. When you have accomplished these, you can play the sudden call card and end the game. Now, when we have finished the resource play, let's have a look at the hazards. Today I have prepared a special Asterisk hazard deck, mastering the forces of the Free Peoples in their fight against Sauron. You will hardly play this hazard deck unless you know your opponent plays a ring wraith, and even then it is quite risky, as you offer him a lot of kill points. On the other hand, these creatures get quickly out of the hand and are mostly very strong. You also do not need to wait for any combos, as there are none to be had. And do not forget you have creatures who can attack his companies anywhere in Middle-earth, if he decides to operate there, or as soon as he sticks his nose out of Mordor. In this particular deck, we have all 5 wizards. Some of them are more useful as permanent events than others. For example, Palando, but can also attack as creatures if that is what suits the situation more. Similar situation occurs with Elrond, aka Master of the House, and Círdan, the Lord of the Haven. Landroval, on the other hand, is a very useful creature for attacking directly and repeatedly if possible. The rest are elves, Dúnedain, and men, each representing the warriors of their respectable people, attacking if some servant of the Dark Lord enters their realm. And I have nearly forgotten the 3 wandering creatures who move around and could be met anywhere, an Ent searching for Entwives, and 2 wandering groups of dwarfs. The game plan is easy. Use those creatures you can when you feel they have the most effect, and discard the rest. Do not spend too much time waiting for your opponent to move where you need him to be to play any creature. None of them is essential for success. It's much better to discard it and move on with your own play. The event half of the hazard deck is built more on hindrance than anything else. There is a mix of basic cards, which you can find in every hazard deck, with annoying cards that make your opponent adjust his strategy and character group composition. The first card is an unexpected outpost, 3 times in this deck. It helps you rotate the most useful hazards you have, but it can't be used to its full potential, meaning returning 1 hazard and the previously played and unexpected outpost card together from discard pile to play deck, because there are no Doors of Night in this deck. The creatures with asterisks do not benefit from Doors of Night, and there is no reason why we should support our opponent in any way. Arouse, Awaken, and Incite Defenders and Denizens, together with Tidings of Bold Spies, reinforce automatic attacks, thus creating problems and hindrances without any risk of giving away kill points. Chill Them with Fear is the only card here which adds prowess and strikes to some of our creatures, so if you can, keep this one in hand and try to use it instead of discarding it. 2 copies should be enough, as you probably won't be able to attack very often, and you can always return it using an unexpected outpost card. Fealty Under Trial and Rats force our opponent to store or lose items. Shut Your Mouth, Rebel Talk, and So You Have Come Back can do miracles when your opponent uses a lot of his general influence, sometimes even forcing him to discard characters, or making him readjust character composition and groups at the minimum. Waiting Shadows taps a character, and Master Disperses makes him discard already influenced faction. And now to the most powerful card in this deck, but only against overt companies and decks, as is this one we have built today. I'm talking about Whale's Flung Away. This card can wreak havoc into any group of orc or troll characters, discarding many of them due to failed body checks. With a little bit of luck, you can discard a character otherwise unassailable, like Troll Lieutenant, or decisively decrease the number of characters in the group. And if we are in it, why not do it twice? A second copy is must against an orc and or troll deck. Now we have come to the last part of today's deck building, the hazard part of the sideboard. As usually, I have there 5 more creatures and 5 more events. The creatures represent the most usable, from general point of view, monsters, and if you have no usable hazards, halve your opponent's hazard limit for a turn and bring those into the discard pile. All of these creatures already are in the deck. This is just adding more copies of the same. 3 of them attack every character in the company, which means there won't be many ways how your opponent will be able to do much during the turn's side phase. The events also only add depth to our hazard play. Second copies of Arouse and Awaken Denizens, with additional Inside Denizens to complete the series. Third copy of Chill Them with Fear, and finally Twilight. That one I recommend getting into the discard pile as quickly as possible, and from there to play decks soon. You will soon know if it is worth the effort to keep it in hand, or whether opponent's hazards allow you to abandon this defensive card. And that is all I have for today. If you were successful, the Witch King is now the overlord of former Arnor, but this time there is no Gondorian navy coming to turn the tide. The remaining elves and other refugees are fearfully awaiting their doom in Lindon around Grey Havens, while the rest of the surviving dwarves have locked themselves in their Blue Mountains mines. Sauron's victory is complete for all practical purposes, and now he will decide who will lead the final assault, throwing the hated elves and their allies into the sea where they belong. Our actions should have proven for good that the first among his servants is the Witch King of ANGMAR. You have watched the video to the end. Thank you for that. Please give me a like if you feel so, and consider subscribing, as it takes just a second to do and will be very much appreciated. Next time we will stay in the north, where Gandalf, after losing all hope in defeating Sauron, will try to establish some sort of alliance to make the last heroic stand against the overwhelming might he knows is coming. See you next time.